For months now, we've been talking about how the core of the Guardians roster was going to determine how the rest of the season turned out. And for about those 2 months, we've been waiting for the core to do something to catapult the Guardians into division control. Over the last week, and especially on Monday, they started to do that, but there's one guy missing. We're going to get into all of that on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today.
Guardians regained some control over the AL Central on Monday. Enough control, they booted the they booted the Royals into third place. The Twins are back into second as this thing continues to get topsy-turvy, and we saw some good signs from some important players on this roster that we'll get into. Chris Antonetti said, back in July, the guys who are here are going to be the ones that have to deliver and finish this thing off. And it seems like for 2 months we've been waiting for that to happen as this team has gone into some inconsistent offensive funks, and I think we've started to see some turnaround, especially on Monday. There's still one guy, though, that has not quite come back and might be the most important one.
Oh, no. Wait,
we'll get into that on today's show.
It's Jose, right? He struggles. He's been struggling so much. Obviously, I am kidding. For those who do not know me, I am Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here. And again, I want to thank you to our newest iTunes review. I'll have to pull up the name. Guys, we have to do this introduction. We've said this 100 times. We'll keep saying it. This is mandated by Locked On. There are intros at the top of every show. We will keep making them because if we don't make them, then we get a lower grade. I'm just going to put it out there on Front Street. I appreciate you don't like them, but we have to do it. Okay? So we get this complaint all the time. And I'm like, clearly you're not an everydayer if you're complaining about this because we've explained it 100 times. So I'm sorry about the intros. We have to do them. It is network. I'm sorry if it's a little bit combative, but the reason for the network, it's smart, is every podcast can be someone's first podcast. And they want to know why they should listen to us, why we were hired, and why we are, the host of this podcast. And why is that? Well, I was brought on when they started this network to be one of the Locked On MLB hosts. Before that, I was a national writer at Scouting 24/7, featured on prospects in the draft. The number 34 yesterday was because Cliff Lee had won 20 wins, and it was the first time in 34 years when he did that. His 20th win was on September 1st when that occurred. And today, I am your 6th favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has or will exist.
I don't know what 6 is. The 6 makes me think of that Ryan Rayburn's number at one time. No, it was 9. I don't know what number 6 would have been. Jason Donald. I had a recent tweet about a post about Jason Donald. But it was pretty bad. I'm Justin Ladd. I don't know why the reason they hired me, to be honest with you. I don't know why Locked On hired me. But I came from Guardians Baseball Insider, where I was the editor-in-chief for a couple of years. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system for a whole bunch of sites, too, since 2007. And I'm currently a freelancer at the News Herald and the Morning Journal, covering prospects on my own site and Prospects Live as well. Speaking of covering prospects, September 12th, if you have not gotten your Captain's playoff tickets yet, the Captains will be hosting the Dayton Dragons in the playoffs that day. It'll be game 2 of the series. I was looking at the schedule. I think that lines up Tugboat to pitch game 2 of the – I'm sorry, not Tugboat. He's pitching game 1. I think game 2 is probably going to be it'll be a Thursday, September 12th. I think that's going to be either Yorman Gomez or possibly Rorik Malfrud. So Tugboat's going game 1. But anyway, I'll be there. You should come too. We'll hang out. Use our link to buy the tickets, whether you're looking at it on YouTube or if you look at it in the podcast description, use that link. Get 20% off by using code LOCKDOWN at that link. We'll hang out during the Captain's playoff game, September 12th. Other playoff happenings. Guardians on Monday. Really positive game. I think, like we've been talking, obviously we said on Monday's show that great, the Guardians beat the Pirates. They did something they needed to do. They won 2 or 3. They looked good offensively. They did some good things. And we said, is this finally the series where I hate using the word momentum because I feel like it doesn't exist. Everything is just day to day. You want to build confidence, I guess.
Yes,
I guess
it's confidence. I agree.
Yeah, maybe confidence leads to momentum. I don't know, or it's the chicken before the egg. But we wanted to see them take some of the things they did well at, against the Rangers and against the Pirates, and they weren't really using those to the next step. And what they do against the Royals. And I think you saw some of the most positive signs on Monday, and even over the last week, that you've seen from a lot of guys in this roster over the last 2 months. And what I mean by that is, like, the first thing is Gavin Williams, right? Gavin Williams was very good. He allowed just one hit. He walked 2 guys. One was Bobby Witt. I have no problem walking Bobby Witt.
Yep.
Now the Royals don't have Vinny Pasquantino. Like, there's no reason to let Bobby Witt beat you without Pasquantino in the lineup. And he pitched a heck of a game, and he went 7. And that's after he was at 48 pitches over 2 innings. And he came back and he only threw 50 pitches from innings 3 through 7, which is incredible. So that was first and foremost. But offensively, they had to score the runs, and they got the magic number 4. And it was Josh Naylor with a couple big hits, and he got stepped on by Tommy Pham. Josh Naylor just is a lightning rod for injuries. It's unbelievable. Ones that are his fault and ones that aren't. But you saw good signs from Josh Naylor. You saw great signs from Lane Thomas. Andres Jimenez is having a good couple of weeks here in a row now. Jose's still Jose. Noel had a nice hit during the game. He ended up scoring a run, which was big. Bo Naylor had a couple of good at-bats. Like, you saw signs from guys that you really need to see signs from in order to win this game, in order to, finish off the division title down the stretch. I think that's the most important thing, is you are starting to see signs from the guys that you need to start showing up this month if you want to clinch a division title.
Yeah, and it's nice to see who we saw him do it against, right? Like seeing Thomas against a righty and Naylor versus a lefty, seeing that type of performance. Yeah, and, a team that's, a playoff squad. As much as people want to be like, the Central's bad, it's like, guys, it's not the old days. It's not like you can only, there's it's not the unbalanced schedule of the past. Like, these teams who have good records at this point in the year are good teams. Just full stop, end of story. You can't get lucky and have, the playoffs are set. Like, we don't know necessarily the order, but like the teams who's going to be in the playoffs is basically set. So you're not a playoff team via luck. Now, is there a lot of variance year to year? Absolutely. That's why Cleveland was in one year, out the next, and look like they're back this year. It's why the Rays aren't this year after having been in. There's that degree of variance, but they faced a good team. They came back from down. When the other team answered, they answered. They had some opportunities to both make the lead bigger and really lose this one. And they just, Gavin Williams was spectacular. The bullpen mostly did its job, and they had enough offense. And here we go. They've built up a nice little lead again after a week ago at this time when we were like, when we were recording a week ago, it's what? They had a 1-game lead. Now it's 4.5, right? Or is it 3.5?
Yeah, they finished off
because the Twins are in second.
Yeah, it's 3.5 because the Twins are in second, and they won on Tuesday night against the Rays, or I'm sorry, Monday. Yeah, when they came back, when they lost on Tuesday against the Royals, they were tied, and the Royals took the season tiebreaker. So technically, the Royals had the division lead. And since then, they're now back to 3. The Royals are now in third place, like since last Thursday. So I'm sorry, Wednesday. So less than a week, the Royals have now lost 2 spots in the standings because Houston really helped out the Guardians, and obviously losing Vinny Pasquantino has hurt them, and obviously Lucas Urseg's been hurt, which is a rough blow for them too.
And they haven't been good against good teams this year.
That's true.
And they had,
except for the Guardians.
And and they did beat up on the Guardians, but they struggled against the Astros, and that's why it's important to take care of business.
Yeah, the Guardians, and for whatever reason, the Guardians are 5-5 against the White Sox, and they've got 3 more games against them that they have to win. I think it's just good for the psyche, for maybe the team and the fans, for beating the Royals. You had the comeback on Wednesday against them, against Michael Wacha, and then they were down 1-0, and Gavin Williams, like I said, threw 48 pitches in 2 innings, and it's like, all right, well, he's going to get through 5, and better hope he scores some runs, and you're going to use the bullpen a lot today, and that's good. I guess that's okay because Tanner Bybee goes on Tuesday, but now Gavin Williams went out and dominated. He turned things around. It took to the 5th inning to figure out Wacha, but they did. So now you've won 2 in a row against the Royals, and you've put them back, a few steps behind you. The Twins are still hanging around. They'll have to deal with them later, 1 more week, but you have the tiebreaker with the Twins. So at some point we will get into some numbers. I don't think today is the day, but at some point we'll get the numbers, because it is now September 3rd when you're listening to this. and the days are coming off the calendar, and every game's going to matter. Every day matters. Every day that a team behind you does not catch you is a day off the calendar, and the clock works in favor of the Guardians right now because they take care of the Royals in game one, and the rest of the division will kind of set up how it's going to set up. And you got the Twins ahead. Good taking game one against the Royals, and they need to do all they can right now because they've got a tough stretch coming up against the Dodgers as well. And I believe after the Dodgers, they have, that's the White Sox. And yeah, whatever reason, they've struggled against the White Sox. So we'll see how that all plays out. And again, the clock is going to work in the Guardians' favor if they continue to take care of business, which the offense the last couple of days looks like you're seeing positive signs, except for one player. There's one player that is still not giving you the best of signs for Cleveland, and maybe the player the Guardians need. I don't want to say most, but he's pretty important to the Guardians' success. We are going to talk about that player coming up in just a moment. First, I'm going to talk to you about Game Time because I'm still, again, I said it yesterday, I'm still searching for the perfect Ohio State tickets. I don't know when I'm going, but I know I'm going to buy them last minute because the deals on Game Time are awesome. You have super deals, amazing deals, all that good stuff on Game Time that tell you if you're getting a good deal on these tickets based on where they're located, what they're normally going for, where they're going elsewhere, and just general price for the game and other deals in there. And you get to see your seats before you buy, which I always love. And I always talk about the all-in pricing because I want to know if I'm going to this game, whatever event I'm going to, I want to know what am I paying to get in the door 100%. I don't want to put tickets in my shopping cart and go to checkout and see there's like $40 in fees I didn't expect. Don't like that. So when you're using Game Time, I always recommend turning on the all-in pricing. You get no surprise fees at checkout. That is really important. You can save money on sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater, all that good stuff. And again, the super deals tell you exactly what kind of deal you're getting. And they have Game Time picks too. That's a new one. It tells you what are the best picks for that game. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. There's just so many helpful features on Game Time. I use this app, again, to buy tickets. I'm not just reading this. Like I use this app to buy tickets to all kinds of events. So it is helpful for me. And it can be helpful for you because it helps you take the guesswork out of buying tickets. And if you're a new customer, download the app, create the account. And if you use our code LOCKEDONMLB, you're getting it $20 off your first purchase as well, on top of all the other great features. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Check out our pal Sully over at Locked On MLB after you're done listening to Locked On Guardians as your first listen today and every day, wherever you get podcasts. We do appreciate that. And we would appreciate you checking out all the best MLB storylines on Locked On MLB with our pal Sully. Shohei Ohtani. I think he has 44 home runs and 46 steals. He might be 50-50. Jose Ramirez getting close to 40-40. I hope Sully talks about that. All kinds of good stuff over on Locked On MLB. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Jeff, the one guy we have not seen consistent signs from, again, Josh Naylor is looking better, despite the fact that he just keeps, again, attracting injuries one way or another. Jose Ramirez has been Jose Ramirez most of the season. Noel has been Noel every day. He gets into one. I thought he had a home run, one inning today, which was close. But he had a hit. Manzardo's home runs were great. Jimenez is looking better. Lane Thomas. We have to talk about Lane Thomas. But before we get to Lane Thomas, Stephen Kwan has yet to turn things around. Since July, it has been all downhill for Stephen Kwan. And it's hard to figure out what's going on. Like, you and I were, before we even started recording, we're looking around like, okay, why have his numbers cratered since June? And July and August were, below average. They weren't unplayable levels. August was better, but for a guy that, was the catalyst of this offense the first couple months of the year, it's a rough spot right now. And I would say Stephen Kwan is the second most important person in this offense behind Jose Ramirez. Naylor's important. Noel's been important to them, but I think everything, the way the lineup's set up, the way this team is constructed, the second most important offensive player on this team is Stephen Kwan. And I think if they're gonna, I don't know, can they win they're doing it right now. Can they win the division the way Stephen Kwan is playing right now is one thing. Can they win in the playoffs the way he's playing right now is probably a whole different thing.
Yeah, and he's barely hitting 200 in the second half. He has a 204 average. We're really trying to figure out what's going on. One of the big things is he's not hitting line drives anymore. He is putting the ball in the air, but his launch angle is the same. His exit velocities are the same. I will say I don't think there's necessarily a smoking gun, but the one thing that is interesting is he's actually, the whole thing was he's going to be more aggressive with first pitch. He's actually swinging less at the first pitch this year than he did a year ago. Now, is that adaptions? Our team's adapting. We even looked at pitch mix. We really dove into a million different ways. And the big thing here is he is pulling less, and he is hitting a lot less line drives. His line drive percentage. And when you look at his individual performance, this is kind of similar for a lot of guys, honestly. Like, you're going to be more successful on line drives than anything else. But he's at like a 250 weighted runs created plus on line drives and like a 40 if flies or ground ball. Ground ball is pretty terrible for everyone, but other players who have a little more power see more with flies. But I mean, you think about it, most home runs and doubles are not fly balls, they're line drive shots. You don't see a lot of lazy flies that turn into things. So it's about just he has the worst exit velocity I want to see in baseball. The worst, it's just part of who he is. So I'd be very curious what's going on. There have been some points where he's chased more, but it's just been bad. He has been essentially over the last 2 months, he's been plus Miles Straw. Like, he's been rocking a 70 weighted runs created plus, like 71, 72 in the second half with plus defense. I know people hate it when I do that comp, but it's just to say how bad it's been for about 2 months straight now. And it's a killer at the top of your lineup. Like, that's the concern. Like, even if he doesn't get it together, then they got to figure out a better way to success. Because right now, Stephen Kwan at the top of your lineup is just, hey, guess what? We're guaranteeing ourselves an out before Jose Ramirez gets up there. That's the truth of it. Like I said, he's hit 204 in the second half. He's, for a guy that people are like, he might hit 400. Now he's struggling to hit over the Mendoza line, which is just a weird statement. And does he have bad BABIP luck? Yeah, but one of the things with BABIP is when you don't hit the ball hard, like sometimes you have lower BABIPs. Guys who hit it hard have higher ones. Speed can also, but overall, like when you have 2 months of sustained bad BABIP, that's not necessarily bad luck. There is another issue going on.
Yeah, I do agree. There is a degree of, I don't think it's buying into his own power surge early on. Like, he had 13 home runs, and it's like, he hasn't hit a home run since August 10th.
Yeah, he had 2 this month.
Minnesota series,
or last month
in August. Yeah, no, it was, and he went 4 for 10, 4 for 8, whatever it was, against the Pirates and the Royals in back-to-back games last week, and since then he is 0 for his last 13. So it's part of the inconsistency. He has struggled to put together, like most of the guys did for July and August, put together a consistent offensive performance. I think some of it, I'm going to, like I said, we did a whole lot of digging on the data, and the best thing we can come up with is pitchers are pitching him differently. And what I mean by that is, I think the thing he was trying to do more was pick on more fly balls. More fastballs on the inner half of the plate and pulling them for home runs, because he can do that. He has that skill. I think what's happened as a result, and a lot of people like to point, he's trying to hit home runs. I think maybe sometimes your swing can get out of whack when you do that. So I think maybe there's part of that. I wonder if it's not so much intentional as it's maybe he's created some bad habits because of that adjustment. And it's bad habits when you're swinging are hard to adjust back from in season. So like maybe there's some issues reversing some of those habits. But I also wonder if teams have just decided we're no longer going to, the Savant doesn't have this data. I'd have to really dig into like Brooks Baseball or something. Teams have just maybe not, they're not giving him fastballs in the inner half of the plate. He might get a fastball away or high, fastballs that are non-competitive, fastballs that he doesn't have any business offering at because he's not going to do anything with it. I know specifically what happened to him on Monday was he was getting a lot of breaking balls low and in, and he's chased some of them. And I saw Walker throw a bunch of changeups low and away, and he chased a couple of those, and some he missed and some he popped up. So I think a lot of it is he is just not seeing fastballs on the inner third anymore. And you don't have to be scared to throw him a fastball in a lot of cases. The only place you have to not miss is on the inner half of the plate because he does turn on those. But if you miss with a fastball high or away, the worst he's going to do is pop a single the other way. My issue here is, you were talking about, he's a guaranteed out at the top of the order. There's nobody else in this roster you can hit first. I think in an ideal world, maybe you would have moved Kwan out of the leadoff spot to figure things out. But there's just nobody else I can look at on this lineup and say, okay, this guy hits first. Like Jimenez is up to second again because he's been hitting well lately. But there are
no other options.
Yeah, he started the year hitting second. Like there's just been nobody there consistently. They've had Jimenez, they've had Freeman, they tried Jose a little bit. I would go back to that if I'm being honest.
Same.
I know he hasn't hit well there in that spot, but I wonder if maybe if Jose is hitting behind Kwan, does he get more of those fastballs because teams are not going to want to walk him with Jose coming up? So maybe you offer him some protection. There's just nobody else in this lineup I think you can afford to lead off. That's the problem. And Jimenez hitting third is not much different than him hitting second, honestly. And at least that way Jose comes up with one out at the worst. And he might get on base and steal a base and allow somebody else to drive him in with one out. So I don't know. And that's the one change you can make. I just don't see any way you can move Kwan down. But I guess I think they can win the division with the way he's hitting currently. But obviously the playoffs, I don't think they go anywhere in the playoffs without Kwan. I'm not saying he's got to turn back into April Stephen Kwan or where he was hitting had an 879 OPS, but if you can get closer to what he did last year, or even obviously 2022 Kwan back, you're in much better shape. He's just got to get on base. Simple as that. He's got to get the batting average back to above 300. He's got to get on base at a 35% clip, and that's not what he's doing right now. But I guess they can win the division with him the way he's playing right now. But as far as the playoffs go, it's going to be hard for them to go anywhere deep without him.
Prone to these ups and downs, though. That's the one thing we've seen in these 3 years. That's if you want to have a positive. Yeah, it's like anyone who is kind of his profile. I mean, he had a rough first half, so it's like this could just be, hey, he flipped his year and he's gonna still end up with a better year because the first half was so good. But yeah, it's unusual a little bit just because the length of it at this point.
I guess if you want to point to some positives in August, he walked more than he struck out by a significant degree, which is not something he's done a lot in his career. He doesn't walk or strike out a ton in general. He had a 13% walk rate in August, which is a lot for him. And he struck out under 10%. So
maybe it's showing a degree of passivity, and then he, because he can make
passivity is better than what he's been doing. Truthfully, maybe just letting pitchers walk him is better than what he's been doing. That's what I could think of. All right, we have a lot of minor league Monday stuff we didn't get to on Monday, but we're recording this on Monday, so we're going to count it as minor league Monday. We'll talk a little about Lane Thomas because we haven't done that yet, and then we'll get into guys who were not called up. We said we would talk about the non-call-ups for September. Got some other guys we want to talk about as well. So Lane Thomas and minor league guys not called up for September that maybe still we will see in September. So all that coming up.
I know everyone out there actually listens to these ads. And how do I know that? Well, I know that because everyone caught me that I read the wrong column on Jose Ramirez and his chances at 40-40. He's 6 away at both. FanGraphs projects him to go 39 and 39, I want to say. So it still says that you probably should say no, not yes when you look at that line. But hey, if you want to go with your heart, not the numbers, I'm not going to blame you. You've heard a lot of talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook.
Guardians and Royals, 7:40 on Tuesday night. Check it out on your SiriusXM app. It's Tanner Bybee. It is who did I say there? Who's pitching for the Royals that night? It is Brady Singer. Should be a good matchup.
Yes.
Check out that by searching Guardians on your SiriusXM app. All right. Quickly about Lane Thomas, Jeff. I know you've been kind of keeping track of what he's been doing lately.
Yeah.
This is one guy the Guardians are glad is finally starting to show up. It's been looking good. He had a home run off a righty on Monday, and it was what did I say? It was 104 off the bat. He had 2 hits on Monday.
Yeah, I want to say it was 103 when I saw the data on it.
Okay, it was the double was 102, and the home run was 103. The double was off Daniel Lynch, who's a lefty, but the right off of Waka was 103. So good signs from him.
Yeah, I mean I think he's played a better center field than I expected, if I'm being honest. I really have to dig into the numbers, but I haven't really seen anything too egregious out there. But he's now making hard contact. He's getting comfortable. We've talked about it a lot of times. Getting traded is hard. He got traded when he was not a full-time player. Like at that point, he was excited to get traded to the Nationals because he got an opportunity. Like that was really it was all his third trade. I think he went to the Blue Jays, to the Cardinals, to the Nationals. And now he's settling in, and he's playing really well. That's 6 straight games with a positive outcome on the game. Like in the one game we're not counting is the one where he probably should have had a hit if Brian Reynolds doesn't knock it away. So yeah, it's nice to see this. It goes back to last week, which is we don't want to get too up or too down on someone based off of a few weeks. We really want to focus in on like what a player has done over multiple seasons. And is Lane Thomas going to be this good long term? No. He's closer to a league average bat who's going to struggle against righties. He's going to be closer to that like 88, 84 range against righties, league average wise. Against lefties, he's awesome. He's going to be a solid defender. He'll be about a league average player. And frankly, league average sounds spectacular. Some of the positions that aren't even approaching that for this team.
Not only that, approaching for the trade deadline. Like a league average bat at the deadline is pretty good. I mean, Randy Arozarena has been everyone at Randy Arozarena. He's been not good. Everybody at the deadline has been not good. It's been Alex Cobb has been like the best player since the deadline. Besides like Eflin and and Dylan Carlson, who again nobody wanted. So 5 hits the last 2 games for Thomas. Had a hit against the Pirates as well. He should have had a hit if Reynolds didn't take that away. So at least we'll give him credit for that. Had a hit against the Royals last week. So things are starting to move in a positive direction for Lane. And I even said
some bases too.
Yeah, he's fast. We know he's been fast. I even said like a week or 2 ago, I was like, man, if he keeps going like this, you have to wonder about non-tendering him. I will say for the month of August, he had a 316 on base, which isn't like anything earth-shattering, but like we're just talking about Kwan and how he's having a hard time. Like getting on base over 30% of the time, the way the offense has gone recently is still better than nothing. It's good to see the turnaround. The Guardians need this, especially with it's an extra bat, getting things going while they're still trying to figure out what's going on with Stephen Kwan. About the non-call up. So I know a lot of people are asking questions about why not Valera? Why not Walters? Why not? I don't think Franco Aleman's coming up this year, although
they have to roster him.
They do have to roster him, so that does make things interesting. I just feel like they don't trust Aleman right now. Like for Aleman's breakout a year ago, again, I think I've said this multiple times in the podcast, is that the farm director like told me in an interview like they were working with him to like be more available. Like last year during his breakout, he was going like 4 or 5 days between appearances because he just wasn't quote unquote available like they'd like day to day. Like that was an issue. And for them to say that out loud, like no off the record, like that does say something. And then you have the injury this year. So I feel like they're not going to call him up. And if they do, it won't be for like a playoff preview maybe, because unless he came up and really earned their trust, I'd be surprised. Walters is a different story. I still think there's a chance to see Walters. Again, I think I said the other day that I don't think this roster is at its final form. Like Manzardo has to be on this roster, but I think there are other guys you can replace with Walters. Do you think Valera, we're going to see Valera? Like, I think it's weird. I think you have to see Valera at some point. Like the reason Tyler Freeman is up here at this point basically is because they don't seem to be concerned that if he doesn't play, it's not a big deal because he hasn't shown anything in a while. And he's just a backup who's here for depth at this point. And they'd rather have Valera playing every day. But did they run out of the whole playing for every day thing? Because he's played enough at AAA. He's healthy right now. It's as healthy as he's ever been. Like, are they confident they're going to get a 4th option year on him or something? Like that, you have to be active on the active roster less than 90 days in one minor league season during your option years for the team to be able to apply for and be granted a 4th option year. I haven't looked into if Valera missed enough time for that. It's got to be in one season. But like, it seems like Valera, it would, yeah, Valera would be a good, like, it'd be good to get a look at him. But it's like, does he take Brennan's spot? They seem to like Brennan. They have nobody else to play center. How much do you trust Thomas? And like Freeman, everyone's like, send Freeman down. But like the deal with Freeman again is he's not playing every day and they don't seem to care. So it's like, you're not going to bring Valera up to sit on the bench. Like, Manzardo knows his role. He's going to DH against righties. That's what he's going to do. Fry is going to DH against lefties and he plays him first. Hedges knows his role. Freeman, I don't know what you do with him, but like Valera, I don't know. Is it worth it for him to come up and play once or twice a week here in September? They did it for Bo in 2022, right? But he was on the playoff roster and he was a 3rd catcher. This is another outfielder with very limited experience. I don't know. Like I don't see a pathway here, but it's a very confusing outlook.
I mentioned this before. It's so reminiscent, and I've said it all year, of how the Yankees handled Esteban Florio, where it's like they had a crying need in the outfield. They had this former top prospect. They had every reason to give him a try. He was having a great statistical season, and they didn't. Right? They didn't think there was anything there. And guess what? We learned, they were right. There wasn't. And not say that there isn't necessarily anything there, but the lack of any movement on him, I think, kind of speaks volumes. One of those things where he's interesting, but
if you call him up,
yeah,
Noel has to play every day.
Yeah,
you're trying to figure out with Kwan. You've got Thomas and Brennan and Schneeman for center and Freeman still.
No, there's not a spot.
There's just no at bats. Yeah, and again, you don't want to glue him to the bench when he comes up, right?
But it's the same situation with like him and Jonathan Rodriguez, right? Like these are kind of almost borderline fringy guys for them right now. And you're just not going to see Valera. They don't have a place to play him with Manzardo up. There's it was one or the other. As much as we talked about like this or that, it's like you do have to play Noel every day. You're not going to bench Naylor. You're not, this is your team, and they're going to play Thomas virtually every day from here on out. It looks like as well. So there aren't at bats. So he's in AAA. He'll play every day, and there's
Valera's not a center fielder.
He's not a center fielder, which is why, like, I saw someone's like, send down Brendan. I'm like, you need a legit backup center fielder on this team. You can't just have guys who have played that. Like, I mean, yeah, I understand the idea of like send out, it's like if you send out anyone, it's very clearly Freeman. But the thing is, Freeman's role right now is to be a guy who plays once or twice a week, be an emergency guy who can play all over. It's a role you need, but it's not a role you want. If you have any value in a player, you don't kind of want them in that role because you want them getting regular reps. That is a role right now that is not a regular rep role.
Yeah, and the reason they did it with Bo Naylor in 2022 is because he was a 3rd catcher, and they were very clearly close to they were very close to handing the reins over to him, obviously, at the end of 22. I know they signed Mike Sannino, but they were very close to letting him do that. And for Valera, I don't think you're quite at that point because you just don't know. Like, Bo Naylor had shown all the signs to that point. Valera has been better since he's been healthy this year, and you clearly can see what he can do against righties, but I think there's less confidence in his ability than there was in Bo Naylor. I know Bo has struggled this year. I still think this is a mulligan year for him in terms of, we saw him do this in the minors in 2021, and he bounced back in 2022. I still believe in that, and he might never hit lefties, but we'll see. Speaking of other minor leaguers, Jeff, we talked about Bazana. I talked to Ralphie on Friday as well. Also another fantastic kid, super humble. Also found out he played a ton of other positions in high school. He was not strictly a catcher. So interesting, the Guardians drafted him as a catcher. Obviously, he's never appeared at a game in the major league, in the minors as a catcher. I don't expect that to change at this point. It is all bat for Ralphie. And that doesn't mean he's not going to be an adequate fielder somewhere. I mean, if you haven't seen the catch on Twitter from like 2 weeks ago at this point, of robbing a home run in left field. He literally went up the wall, scaled the wall, and took back a home run. You cannot luck your way into that. Like, you can make a hard catch look, or an easy catch look hard, because you're inexperienced and maybe not athletic. And people say, oh, what a great play. You made a flashy play. Because sometimes that happens. You make what would be a routine play for Stephen Kwan might be a hard play for somebody else. That wasn't the case. You can't rob a home run by luck. Like, he went over the wall and took a home run back. That is not something you can make look any harder or easier. It's just very hard. So turns out he played third, he played first, he played the outfield in high school. He wasn't really much of a catcher. So
I think
interesting they drafted him as a catcher, but I don't expect him to be there anymore. Yeah. But I think with more reps in pro ball, I think he can handle left. And I think he talked too about his trip to the futures game. He was asking guys questions about adjustments throughout the season. One thing he told me was he was using a 34-ounce bat most of the season. And a couple of guys said they were swinging 33 and a half. And they said, you'd be surprised at how much that extra ounce or half an ounce can help you, not needing the extra weight because it's a long season. You're going to get tired and you can do as much damage with a slightly lighter bat. And since he switched off of that, he's been much better. So I have a lot of confidence in Ralphie. The bat's got to do most of the work, but I think he'll be just fine elsewhere. But again, another very humble kid and just really motivated to work. And physically, he looks just the part. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think there's also a chance for right field just because the arm was a catching arm there. So, you know, it's like
he does have a good
either corner spot for him. And there's a lot of guys here. I think we might have to kick some of them down the road for later on in the week as players to talk about.
Yeah, we talked Walters. We talked Aleman. I still think Walters might come up this month. I still see.
Yeah, I think he's the one guy that has a fighting chance of being promoted.
Is it Carrasco? Carrasco is out in Arizona right now.
Let's see Carrasco. So, I will say, looking at the list, it's like, you know, Antunes and Webb are the only guys you have to roster or risk the Rule 5. So everyone else on there who isn't already rostered.
Aleman.
Yes, Aleman. I'm sorry. Aleman, Webb, and Antunes are the three you have to roster or risk the Rule 5. But yeah.
We will get to that. We will talk Rule 5. So
eventually.
On tomorrow's show, look for Tanner Bybee to make some adjustments from his last start against the Royals. You know, some things did not go the way he wanted. This will be a big test for him facing again this roster a week later, although they won't have Benny Basquintino who got to him. We'll talk about what the Guardians need to go record-wise to finish off winning this division. We'll talk about what the best roster is for the end of the season, what their playoff roster might look like. We got to talk about the Astros. The Astros are not far behind Cleveland, so we'll have to talk about how Cleveland's going to be able to hold them off because they do need this first-round bye, I think. We'll talk Dodgers series, too, because that's going to be a big series for them because it's going to be probably arguably their toughest games of the month. And then we'll also get into Rule 5, 40-man protections as well. Yeah.
It's the best team in baseball.
It's the toughest.
You know, again, I do want to say thank you to Banks 3K. And I apologize if I came off too aggro with you. I appreciate that you're an everydayer. I think sometimes we just get tired of repeating the same things over and over again. Everyone goes through it. You know what that's like. We would prefer not to do intros, if I'm being honest, but we have to. And again, make sure you're checking out the promo code Locked On for the Lake County event on the 12th. I don't know how I will contribute. I will try to contribute, but Justin is going to be there, and it should be a fun time had by all.
Come hang out.
So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to all of our everydayers like Banks 3K and go Guardians. Go.